Hello, good morning, good evening, and welcome everyone to Algebra 2 webinar in which we are going to be learning about how is it that you can ace algebra and you can take those learnings and apply those learnings across the board to all of quant sections. My name is Payal Tandon and I will be your host today. Now, in order to make sure that all of you are well prepared for the session, before the session itself, we shared these video lessons with you, and I hope that all of you got a chance to go through them. If you haven't already gone through them, I would strongly recommend that after this webinar, definitely access them and make sure that you have the right level of learnings in all these concepts. By the way, all these concepts are also included in your free trial. Now, every weekend we conduct these webinars on Saturday and Sunday to make sure that you are well prepared to understand what it takes to prepare for the GMAT. Now, next weekend on Saturday, Rajat would be explaining to you how is it that you can take your current abilities and take those to and how can you improve upon those in order to get to your target GMAT score. So if you haven't already registered for this webinar, definitely register for that by clicking on this register now button. So I leave this pod here with you for the next couple of seconds. Uh, Now, this is a heavily attended webinar. We already have about 100 participants, and I want to make sure that I understand the makeup of this group so that I can customize this session according to the makeup. So if you haven't as yet put in your responses in this poll, I really urge you to do so right now. Let's give it a couple of seconds for everyone to put in the responses here. All right, I've gotten a couple of trickling ones here. The largest segment here is actually, if I take a look at people who have their GMAT test beyond 45 days, that's about largest segment here, 50% of the segment here. So about 57%. All right, and then there are a couple of those who are taking the test within the next 15 days. You are at the right place. Don't think that you won't get much from this webinar. You will definitely learn a lot from this webinar. If at all, if your preparation strategy, preparation method is absolutely solid, you will get feedback on how is it that where is it that you stand in the concepts and application for algebra. So there's definitely things for everyone to learn in this session. But this helps me. Thank you. All right, so now I'm going to change the layout of this presentation. So it will take a couple of seconds for this presentation to stabilize on your end. And as soon as you start to see Algebra Quant Live session in the presentation pod, click on yes, because that's an indication that the layout has stabilized at your end. Okay, let's get a few more responses here. All right, let's get going. So there are three parts to this session. In the first part, we'll go over a brief introduction to what e-GMAT is and how is it that our courses are structured. Then we'll go into the live session part, wherein we are going to talk about algebra in specific. And then towards the end, I will take any questions that you may have pertaining to your GMAT prep or general questions otherwise. Okay. Now, tell me one thing. How many of you aim to score 720 or higher? All right, let's get a few more responses here. It's about 90% of the class aims to score 720 or higher. Okay. Now, if you go to MBA.com and look at the stats, you will realize that only 6% of all GMAT test takers score 720 or higher. Another thing you will realize is that the median GMAT score at most top B schools has been going up for the last few years. Just this year, the median scores at these top schools have increased. Okay. So only 6% of people score 720 or higher. Now, what can we tell about those people who do score above 720? A good percentage of those study with e-GMAT. And if you take a look at some of these stats, you will come to the same conclusion. Let's take a look at the number of verified reviews on GMAT Club. e-GMAT, Magoosh, Veritas Prep, and Manhattan Prep are four of the top test prep companies in the GMAT prep space. And when you take a look at the number of verified reviews, you will find that e-GMAT has more verified reviews than all of these other companies combined. And what are verified reviews? These are reviews posted after October 2015 or about 3 years ago and have been verified using an ESR, that is an enhanced score report, or a verified GC membership, GMAT club membership. Similarly, if you take a look at the number of success stories written on GMAT Club Share My GMAT Experience, you will find a very similar story. e-GMAT has been mentioned more frequently in those success stories than the next three most popular test prep companies. The links to both these stats are over here, so definitely verify the same. Now, it begs to question that what makes our students more successful? Truly, it's the architecture of our courses or our distinct approach to GMAT prep. Now, to understand this, I want you guys to focus on what are the different learning architectures that are present today. There are two different learning architectures. The first architecture, which is the most common architecture, is the book-based approach. And the second one is the private tutor approach. Now, if you compare online prep companies today, most of them are centered around the book-based approach. While they may have added audiovisual learning to their offerings, their core architecture is still the book-based architecture. And I'm going to prove that to you. e-GMAT, on the other hand, is built on a private tutoring-based architecture. Now let's see what the difference between these two architectures is and why one architecture has a higher success rate than the other. Now, to compare these methodologies, let's set a baseline on how do you ace the GMAT. To get a score of 720 or higher, the first thing you need to do is create a personalized path towards your goal. A very, very important step, a step that a number of you don't do. Then you need to make sure that you learn the concepts that you don't know. Then you need to learn how to apply those concepts, another step that is skipped by a number of you. And finally, you need to confirm whether you have attained the level of mastery that you actually need in order to score 720 or that 95 percentile. Or in other words, can you perform better than the 95% of the test takers? That's something that you need to confirm before you go ahead. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to compare this with how a book-based architecture gets you there. A book-based architecture is all about autonomy. In a book-based architecture, you get a lot of learning material and possibly some marks. But the key decisions on how to go about preparing for those is completely on you. For example, in a book-based architecture, you create your own study plan. You create a schedule and you study concepts, and while studying concepts, you make a decision on whether you have attained that level of mastery enough to move forward. Once you learn the concepts, you practice questions. Why? Because books don't focus much on teaching you how to apply the concepts. You typically learn the application by practicing questions, which is why people who use books believe in practicing thousands and thousands of questions, and they ultimately end up solving so many of these questions that they don't really need to. Now, once you've solved some questions, you then take the mock test to evaluate where you need to focus. Again, the onus of analysis and decision making here is completely on you, and it can definitely get subjective. Now let's compare that to the private tutoring architecture, which works slightly differently. A good private tutor also starts with a study plan. To do that, he first evaluates your strengths and weaknesses to create the fastest path to your goal. Once you have this personalized study plan, your tutor then teaches you the concepts and evaluates you constantly in the process. Once you've learned a few concepts, the tutor then teaches you how to apply those concepts in a methodical manner. This cycle of learning concepts and reinforcing application goes on for some time. And after that, the tutor typically carries out a very focused evaluation of your mastery of concepts. In the event that you reach the level of mastery that you set your eyes on, you move on. Otherwise, the tutor creates a mini revision plan for you. So how do these two approaches compare? While you learn the same concepts in both these approaches, there are two main key differences. One, the private tutoring approach is a lot more personalized. starting with your study plans and constant evaluation at each of the four stages. Second, the extent of application that you learn in a private tutoring based approach is a lot higher. And clearly, all of you would agree with me that a private tutoring approach is a lot better. You have a higher chance of success with a private tutor approach. Now let's see, why do we say that e-GMAT is designed to behave a lot more like a private tutor? We will start with step one, which is the personalized study plans. Now let's say you are someone who's starting at 600. Your goal is to get to that score of 720. Now the first thing that you will do is you will experience GMAT Planner. This is an AI utility which we have built so that you can build your own personalized study plan. Let's see how to go about doing that. The first thing to do is you need to enter your current quant and verbal scores. Okay. Next, what you do is based on your target score of 720, the system recommends that okay, this is the target quant and verbal split that you need to focus on. Okay. Next, what you do is in order to get to that, once you decide that okay, you needed to get to a Q50 and a V38 in order to get to that 720, you then decide okay, what should be the makeup of this Q50 and a V38, which is what we call as intermediate trackable targets. For example, you can get to a Q50 in 3 different ways, and this GMAT Planner tool will enable you to discover these ways. Using this tool, let's say you decide that you're going to do well in both arithmetic and algebra. You're going to score an 83 percentile in both. Okay. Similarly, on the verbal side, let's say you've decided to ace sentence correction and do really well on CR and not focus as much on RC. Okay. Now, when you make these decisions, your journey to that 720 is not a black box in which you study, study, and study, and then you take the mock test and hope to get to that 720. It is now a set of 5 neatly trackable milestones. If you get to those milestones, you can be very certain that you can get to that score of 720. Take a look at your milestones here. You are at a Q44 with 59 in algebra, in arithmetic and algebra 39. You need to get to 83 in both. Verbal, you are at 28 with almost similar split over here, SC, CR, RC, and you decide to master SC and then CR and then RC about 68 percentile. You get a very, very personalized map here, which tells you timeline here, which tells you how much time you should be spending per section. Here are your starting abilities. Here are your target milestones. Okay. And you know how much time you need to spend per subsection. Now that we have these milestones, we create a journey towards these milestones. We get your starting abilities for the same. So how does your GMAT prep look like? In quant, you need to go from your starting ability of 40 percentile to 83 percentile. Similarly, in arithmetic, you need to go from 59 percentile to 83 percentile. Here is where you can enter the actual number of hours that you plan to spend on weekdays and weekends. You have your start date and your GMAT end date as recommended by the system. You can go and change any of these individual hours. Let's say you decide to take an off on 8th, you can decide to put 0 hours there. Or let's say if you decide to take an off, so you can put 8 hours there, right? So you can personalize each and every day over there depending upon your own study schedule. If you think about it, we've spent thousands of hours building this utility so that you can create your own study plan in fewer than 7 minutes. All right, so we've taken care of the study plan. Now, let's see how to personalize your learning towards these milestones. A private tutor frequently evaluates whether you've learned or not, right? As he's teaching you the concepts. Our technology platform is engineered to do exactly the same thing. Let's see how. This is what a dashboard looks like for a typical quant course. In this case, we've taken number properties as an example. And let's take a look at divisibility and remainders concept. Okay. Now compare this to the dashboard that looks like for one of the popular courses, one of the other popular courses, Magoosh. Okay. Now what I'm going to show you is screenshots from our course. Okay. This is what a typical concept file would look like. There's you have detailed video solutions for each and every concept. You have detailed visual solutions. You have detailed solutions for each and every practice question in the concept files. Okay. Here's another, so you can basically apply your learnings and you can understand how well you are learning through the concept as you're proceeding through the concept. Contrast that with what you see in a typical file in Magoosh. Very verbose, no interactivity with the student, and very passive learning. Okay. Let's now talk about the application. After making sure that you've learned the concepts, a private tutor also teaches you how to apply those concepts. He tells you what you need to do in steps 1, 2, and 3. And not only that, a private tutor evaluates your ability to apply these concepts as well. Okay, let's take a look at the divisibility and remainders module. You can see a dedicated application file in which we teach you how to apply these concepts, outlining what to do in that step 1, 2, and 3. Then we have a dedicated app practice quiz to evaluate your ability to apply those concepts. And finally, we have a list of official questions with comprehensive solutions on which you can apply your learning. And you get a score for each and every application file, practice file that you interact with in the course. You get feedback on your ability to apply. This is how each and every module, whether it's in quant or verbal, is architected. We have more than 8 application files just in number properties module, and we have 5 total modules in quant. So you get ample number of questions to apply the concepts, to learn how to apply the concepts, and then make sure that you are able to apply those concepts. By contrast, in the Magoosh offering, there is no application file. There is just one practice quiz, that too with 5 questions. And this practice file is common not only to divisibility but also to remainder, to LCM, GCD, even, odd, and so on. Lastly, there is no score indicator on the dashboard. Again, as in the case of a book, the goal is not to teach you application. It's just to have you do some level of practice. All right. Now let's talk about the evaluation for mastery. Remember, what was your goal? Your goal was to get to 83 percentile in algebra, right? And that is why evaluation for mastery is so very important. Now, in the e-GMAT portal, we have built a very specific tool called as Scholaranium that has ability quizzes that allow you to measure your algebra ability apart from the other abilities as well. Not only that, it empowers you to create your path to reaching your target ability. For example, in this case, the student has improved from a 40 to 64 percentile, right? Now, from Scholaranium Analytics, it is clear that to achieve that 83 percentile, this student needs to improve in functions and inequalities. Therefore, this student has a clear path to go from 64 percentile to 83 percentile. Now you can understand why e-GMAT is a lot more like a private tutor instead of a book. Now, you can create an amazing architecture, but to truly make it impactful, you also need to have good instructors. And at e-GMAT, we have some of the best instructors. In fact, 4 out of GMAT Club's top 5 instructors work for e-GMAT. Instructors who not only work full time in helping you ace the test, but are also reviewed a lot more frequently on GMAT Club. So it's not a surprise that while only 6% of individuals score 720 or higher, a good number of them study with e-GMAT. Now here's the batch calendar for the batch that just started yesterday with the CR1 session, which is in which we talk about pre-thinking. Again, this is the only live sessions batch that can give you 7-point score improvement guarantee. No other course guarantees improvement up to 98 percentile. And here's the batch calendar for the quant batch. Again, no other course guarantees improvement up to Q50. And this is a pure guarantee. Unlike other prep companies, we don't require you to take the GMAT twice. I highly recommend that you connect with Rajat on LinkedIn so that you can connect with thousands of other students who are already studying at various MBA schools. All right, so with this, let's come to our second part of the webinar in which we will talk about algebra and how is it that you can master algebra. So here's the batch calendar. Feel free to download it, and I will share this again with you towards the end of this session. Okay, now this is a fairly application focused session. My goal is to teach you how to solve questions in linear equations, absolute value, and absolute inequalities. Okay. Our focus is on applying that unified method to solve questions and exposing the gaps that you have in your approach as we solve these questions. This section this session is a progressive session in which our questions get increasingly difficult as we progress through the sessions. Okay? All right. So what we're going to do now is we are going to start off with a warm-up quiz. Okay, just give me 1 second here. All right. So we're going to start up with a warm-up quiz in which we are going to do 6 problem-solving questions, and then we will apply those questions in the GMAT context. Okay. So I hope that everyone has their pen and paper ready. Now, the purpose of this warm-up section is to give you those basic questions on algebra and make sure that you have the right level of understanding of your conceptual knowledge. Okay. And while I will give you the solution, but I won't really discuss the solution in detail because, again, the point of this session is not to teach you the concepts, but to teach you the application. Okay. But yes, you will definitely get the feedback on what conceptual knowledge do you really need to work on. Okay, so let me just set up the polls here. Now, what I typically do in my sessions is I don't time you all. What I do is I get all of you to click on still solving, and when about 50% of the class has selected one of the answer choices, I give you a 10-second or a 30-second warning depending upon the difficulty level of the question. So let's get this poll up to about 70. I have 120 people in the session, so let's get this up to about 70. I know till now you've been just listening to me. Now you have to do some action on your side. So, yes, get your pen and paper ready and get all geared up to solve some algebra questions. I can see that the ticker is moving ever so slightly. Let's get everyone to click on the still solving button here. Okay, maybe as we get to solving more questions, more and more of you will start to uh, okay, here is the question. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Okay, I'm going to now show you your next question. Okay, can everyone please click on still solving? And I'm going to open up the next question for you. All right, I'm going to now show you the next question. Question number 2. Last 10 seconds. I'll give another couple of seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Question number 3, please click on still solving. All right, here you go. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. So we'll now discuss these three questions one after another. But before I go talking about these discussions in detail, let's hear from you. There you go. How was the experience in solving these three questions? Did you feel that you have a good understanding of concepts in algebra? How many of you felt that you have good understanding of concepts in algebra after solving these three questions? You know that kind of feeling that you get that, yeah, I know algebra. I can do well. Granted, these are easy questions. So it's about a 60, 70, 30 split. Okay. The second and third questions were more difficult. Yes, they were absolutely. Um, okay, so let's go through this now. What is the range of values of y if 4y plus 10 is greater than minus y? What's the concept that we are testing here? What is the concept that we are testing here in this question? Question number one. No one? Inequalities. Yes, inequalities. It's a simple question in which we are testing how is it whether you can solve inequalities or not, right? Now, how to solve inequalities, that's what we are testing. Now, nothing much needs to be done over here in this question. You move the like terms on the same side, right? You get 5y plus 10 is greater than 0. And then you move the other term on the other side. And what you end up getting is that y is greater than minus 2. Choice B is the correct answer. Now, let me get the poll here for question number one so that we can all see how you all as a class performed there. So majority of you, 76% of the class selected choice B as the 77% selected choice B. So good. There were few of you who were not able to solve this question and then a few of you who selected choice A. So my feedback to you guys is that you definitely need to work on how to solve inequalities, linear inequalities. That's the most basic concept. Again, definitely review the concept file that we shared with you. It's also there in your free trial, so definitely do that. Okay. All right. So let's now move on to our next question. In the next question, we had, instead of a single linear inequality, we have now two linear inequalities. So you need to solve the system of linear inequalities, right? Now, what is it that you have to that you have to focus on? Okay, let me see. There are people who are saying that the voice is low, the volume is low. For how many of you is the volume low? Because I haven't changed anything since I started this session. So just want to make sure that okay, so let me ask my question. For how many of you can hear me clearly? No problems with the volume. Okay. So majority of you can hear me clearly. Okay. It's very faint. All right. Let me just okay. Guys, there's nothing that has changed from my end. So for those of you who are not able to hear clearly, I would suggest that you increase your speaker volume. Okay. My microphone is as okay. Let's see. How about now? I've tried to increase it further as much as I could. Is it okay now? Okay, sounds good. I'm glad. All right, perfect. Very nice. Okay, then let's get back to our question number two here. So, okay, so what we have over here is two linear inequalities, right? Now, whenever you have two linear inequalities, what you need to do is there is a way to solve these linear inequalities, right? First, over here, what we are doing is x minus 5 greater than minus 3. We are multiplying both. We have to basically cancel out a term, right? So we are multiplying both sides by 2 so that we can get a common term here between the two inequalities, and then we are adding the two inequalities. The key to keep in mind is that inequalities with the same sign can be added together, right? So over here, you have the same sign, same greater than sign over here. So you can add these two inequalities, and then what you end up getting is y is greater than minus 2. Okay. Now, only about 60% of the class could solve this question correctly. Okay. Remaining about 14% could not either solve it or selected the wrong answer. So from my feedback to you is that you definitely need to understand how to solve linear inequalities. So definitely go through the concept files. Okay, very, very important. Now let's take a look at the last question here, question number 3. Let's get that one. This one, very interesting question. How many non-negative integral values of m does the two given inequalities satisfy? Okay. Now tell me, what is a non-negative integer? What is a non-negative integer? Absolutely. 0 and all positive numbers. Absolutely. Non-negative integers include 0 and all the positive numbers. Okay, it's not greater than 0, it includes 0. So for those of you who selected choice B as the correct answer, about 30% of the class, my feedback to you is that you need to understand, you know inequalities, okay? You are able to solve this system of inequalities, but you didn't know what a non-negative integer is. So that's my feedback. Make a note of that in your scratch pad today, okay? Now, again, we are simply solving these two inequalities. What we get is minus 4m is greater than minus 10, okay? Which means that over here, can I say that 4m is greater than 10? Minus 4m is greater than minus 10. Can I simply say that 4m is greater than 10? Okay, that's the other point of feedback. The correct answer here is no, I cannot say that 4m is greater than 10. Why? Because whenever I multiply both sides of the inequality by a negative number, I always need to flip the sign of inequality. So if minus 4m is greater than minus 10, I multiply both sides by minus 1, I get 4m is less than 10. Let me just point that out to you. Over here, I'm multiplying both sides by minus 1, so I have 4m on one side and 10 on the other side, and I absolutely have to flip the sign of inequality. This is something which is a very, very, very important concept in inequalities. Okay. All right, so now what I get is m is less than 10 by 4, which is 2.5. So I have to figure out the integral values, that two non-negative integers, which means 0 will be included over here, which means that the answer is 3. Okay, so 2 points of feedback, and tell me very clearly, very frankly, how many of you missed out on this part, that whenever you multiply an inequality by minus 1, you always have to flip the sign? How many of you missed out on that one? There were about 50% of the class who said that yes, 4m is greater than 10. So good. For people who have taken that feedback, very, very good. That feedback is going to help you a lot as you solve linear inequality questions. Okay. My second question is, how many of you got this question wrong because you didn't know what a non-negative integer is? Okay. So good. I got this question wrong because again, I kind of know the answer. All of you who selected choice B as the correct answer, you got this question wrong because you didn't know how, you didn't know the non-negative integer. So those are the two feedback points from this question. So definitely make sure that you keep that in mind. I have a comment here. I treated it like equations canceling out minuses. Yes, you're absolutely right. You did that, and that's a very big difference between an inequality and an equation. Okay, so make a note of that. Okay. Okay, so now let's move on to our next set of warm-up questions. Question number 4, and let me bring back the poll here. Sorry, first I have to get you guys to click on still solving. 1 minute here. 1 second. Go ahead, click on still solving. Okay, here you go. Last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And here comes question number 5. Click on still solving, please. Okay, here you go. Last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So what kind of questions were these, questions 4 and 5? What kind of concepts were we testing through these two questions? Absolutely, quadratic inequalities. Yes. Okay. So how many of you feel confident with quadratic inequalities? Okay, I see about a 50-50 split here. All right. Let's understand these questions real quick here. Again, quadratic inequalities are relatively straightforward if as long as you understand the right approach towards them, okay, towards solving such inequalities. Now, what is the range of x for the inequality x minus 2 into x minus 3 is greater than 0? Now, just treat this as a very simple question. If you think about it, you have product of two numbers. X minus 2 is one number, x minus 3 is another number, right? When is the product of two numbers greater than 0? In what cases is the product of two numbers greater than 0? When they have the same sign, yes. So there will be two cases here when they are both positive and when they are both negative. Absolutely right. And that's what we work towards. Okay. Let's take up when x minus 2 and x minus 3 are both positive. In this case, you have x is greater than 2 and x is greater than 3. Now, what values will x be both greater than 2 and greater than 3? When x is greater than 3. Combining both the inequalities, what you get is x is greater than 3. So this is one set of values for which x minus 2 into x minus 3 will always be greater than 0. Now let's take up another set, another possible scenario in which both of these numbers are negative, right? In this case, you have x is less than 2 and x is less than 3, right? Again, you combine both the inequalities. As long as x is less than 2, it will also be less than 3, right? So that's what you get. You combine these two and you create your range, and your range is choice number C over here. Minus infinity to 2 and 3 to infinity. Again, not including 3 or 2 in both the cases. And let's take a look at how is it that you guys performed in this question. Question number 4 here. So about 67% of the class got this question correct, and there were others who couldn't solve it or who solved it incorrectly. So my feedback to those of you who were not able to select choice C is that definitely understand how is it that you should be approaching quadratic inequalities. That's a gap in your skill set. Okay. Why infinity? Because again, x is greater than 3. What does greater than 3 means? 3 so on till infinity. Likewise, x is less than 2, right? So again, from minus infinity all the way to 2. It does not include 2 and 3. Okay, and that's why the parentheses are the way they are. Okay. All right, now we can also use a wavy line method here, which I'm not going to go into the details of, but I'm just going to demonstrate that to you over here. How many of you are familiar with the wavy line method? Yes or no? And again, it's okay if you're not familiar. Again, so essentially what you do in a wavy line method is you take the roots of the inequality here, which is 2 and 3, you plot them on the number line, then you simply draw your wavy line passing through 2 and 3 in this manner. And then you make your observations as long so basically for any values of x less than 2, your values always the product is always positive. For any values of x greater than 3, your values are always positive. And as long as you are within these two values, the value of the product is going to be negative. Again, even if you don't understand this right now, don't worry about it. I will be sharing an article with you during the middle of the in the middle of this session, which you can review later on. Again, it's simply what we covered in the previous slide. We have just translated that into this method, which is a wavy line method, so that you can get to the answer in a little bit quicker manner. That's about it. Okay. All right. Now let's come to question number 5. Now, question number 5 is also quadratic inequality, but it doesn't appear so. How many of you were able to identify question number 5 as a quadratic inequality? Okay, about 60% of the class. Okay, more like 57%. Okay, now let's solve this question. X minus 3 divided by x plus 4 is less than 0. Now tell me something. Can I simply multiply both sides by x plus 4 and say that x minus 3 is less than 0? Can I do that? Why can I not do that? Why can I not do that? That was my mistake. Okay. Absolutely right, because x plus 4 might be negative. We don't know the sign of it, so we won't know how to handle the sign of the inequality. Absolutely right. How many of you made this mistake? How many of you multiplied both sides by x plus 4 and you said, oh, x minus 3 is less than 0, so x should be less than 3? Okay, so my feedback to all of you who are clicking on yes over there is take that as a feedback. Okay, always, whenever you're dealing with inequalities, you always have to keep in mind the sign. The minute you see inequalities on your screen, right at that minute, you should say, oh, I need to look for the sign, or write down in your scratch pad that I need to look for the sign. Okay, so that you don't miss out on this important concept. Okay. All right. So we cannot multiply both sides by x plus 4 because of we don't know the sign. So what are we going to do? What we can do is we can multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole square. Why? Because x plus 4 whole square is always positive, right? So we can definitely do that. So when we do that, what we get is x plus 4 into x minus 3 is less than 0. We have a simple quadratic inequality, which we're going to solve, and we're going to get the answer as choice C. Now, for those of you, let's take a look at how you guys performed. 40% of the class selected choice C. So remaining could not either solve it or selected the wrong answer. And I can see why you would have selected choice A as the correct answer. So, all right then. Again, I would say after the session, definitely look through people who are having problems with solving quadratic inequalities. Take a look at this question as well. Solve this on your own. X plus 4 into x minus 3 is less than 0, and make sure that you can arrive at choice C as the correct answer. Okay? All right. So why not D as an option? Because again, you have to take a look at over here the inequality is less than 0, not greater than 0, which means that which means that one of the two numbers should be of different signs. Okay? Isn't squaring including extra numbers into the inequality? Again, you have to bring this inequality. The skill set that we are testing over here is that you have to understand, you have to bring your inequality in the form that you are familiar of solving. Okay, that's why the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, let me multiply x plus 4 on both the sides, right? But that's something you can't do, right? Because you're not familiar with the sign of x plus 4. Now, if the question itself stated that x is greater than, so if the question stated a constraint such that you knew that x plus 4 is positive always, then yes, you would have simply multiplied both sides of the inequality by x plus 4 and you would have gotten x minus 3 is less than 0, right? But in this case, that's not the case, right? So always you have to, your goal is not to get scared of expressions such as these. Your goal is to bring those expressions in the form of uh, of uh, of of entities that you are familiar of solving. Okay, that is what your goal is, right? And that's why you're now thinking, okay, I know how to solve quadratic inequalities. Is there a way that I can bring this inequality in the form of quadratic inequality? Okay, that's what we are doing over here. Okay, now I can see that a number of you are asking me why the area between minus 4 and 3 is negative. I'm not going to go into the details of that right now. The process that we used for the previous question, that is the process that you need to solve over here. The key thing over here is that both the inequal both these terms x plus 4 and x minus 3 should be of a different sign. So do that on your own and you will be able to get to this. For those of you who are not familiar with the wavy line method, don't worry. I have a file that I will share with you that you can utilize to get to that. Remember, the goal of this warm-up section is to tell you where you are lacking in your conceptual understanding. My goal was not to come and teach you because it is going to take a lot more than 2 hours to teach you all these concepts. But it's a very important thing for you to know that, okay, I know this, but I don't know that, and this is how I can improve, right? So that's the feedback that I want you to arrive at, that I want you to get from this session. Okay. Yes, -4 and 3 are not part of the range. You are right. They are not included, and that's why the parentheses are the way they are. Because we have less than 0, we don't have less than or equal to 0. Okay. All right. So let's now come to the last question here in this warm-up section. And here is the poll for you. Okay, let me just get still solving as well. Okay, can you please click on still solving? All right, here you go. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, the correct answer here is choice C, and it's basically absolute value inequalities, right? So for those of you who got this question correct, I would say you guys know how to solve how to solve absolute value inequalities. For those of you who were either not able to solve it or did not select choice C, my feedback to you is that you need to learn how to solve absolute value inequalities. Okay, so essentially over here, a very simple step-by-step method that I typically follow is that I substitute the number again. I follow to explain it to students is that I visualize the number on the number line. So mod of z is less than or equal to 5 is basically distance from 0 all the way to 5 on both the sides, right? And then I substitute back is z is equal to x plus 3, and what I get is -8 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 2. Again, I'm not explaining the concept here, I'm just going through the solution step by step. If you guys, all of you who have problems with it, definitely look at the concept file that in our free trial and in the algebra course that teaches you this. Okay, but this is something which you absolutely need to know in order to do well on algebra. Okay. All right. So, feedback from warm up section. You really need to have that 200% level of clarity in your concepts so that you can do well in applying those. So, now what my question to you is, let me see if I have the poll here. How many questions did you get correct? Out of the 6 warm up questions, how many questions did you get correct? Okay. So I hope, so tell me, what are your learnings from the warm-up section? Write down all the learnings that you have or all the feedback that you have gotten from the warm-up section. Write down in the short answer pool. The wavy line. Okay, what else? Wavy line reminded me of parabola. Okay. Visualize inequalities on the number line. Good. Missed on basics like eliminating one variable out of two. Okay. Learned the in-depth analysis. Zero is a non-negative integer. Okay, it's neither positive nor negative. It's a non-negative integer. So please make sure, or a non-positive integer. So please make sure that your learning is correct. Basically, how to solve in simple ways. Non-negative integer. Good. All right. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad that you have had some good learnings from this section. Now as I said, I'm going to talk about the wavy line methods. Let me show you the wavy line method here. This is the link, and let me see. Yeah. So Ashutosh, if you can copy this link and provide that to everyone, Ashutosh or Sandeep, that would be nice. Yes. So definitely go through this article on GMAT Club, and you will be able to understand the wavy line method. Okay. All right, now let's go into our GMAT style questions. So what I would like to mention here is that for those of you who don't have that 200% clarity of concepts in algebra, you may end up making mistakes in these GMAT level questions that we're going to show you now. Okay, but it's okay. I don't care whether you get the questions right or wrong in this session. What I care about is whether you are learning the manner in which we should be solving the questions. I want to make sure that by the end of this session, each one of you has a solid understanding of how is it that you should be approaching these questions. How is it that you need to be preparing when you're preparing on your own so that you don't make those mistakes that unsuccessful students end up making. That's what my goal is. Okay. So pay close attention to the process that we are utilizing to solve these questions. Okay. All right. So let's go to our 600 to 700 level questions and just take this away here. I'm going to bring the poll here. All right. So click on have not solved yet. Again, what you'll realize is in these questions, you'll be applying multiple concepts at the same time. Okay. So while in the warm-up questions, we were applying one concept at a time, here you will end up applying multiple concepts. So be careful as you are solving, just do it methodically. Okay. What level were the last six questions? They were not even on GMAT level. They were very, very easy. They were just simply conceptual questions. All right, here you go. Last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. All right. So majority of the class got this question right. Choice C is the correct answer. Again, it's a simple linear inequality over here. We have to find the range of x. There's no constraint on the value of x. Okay, so we rearrange the terms. We get minus 32x is greater than 64. We multiply minus 1 on both sides. We have to change the sign of inequality. If you don't end up changing the sign of inequality, you will select choices A or B by because you didn't change the sign of the inequality. Okay, so the correct answer is x is less than minus 2. So the choice C is the correct answer. Again, minus 2 is not included. So, all right. So for those of you who selected choices A and B, you did not change the sign of inequality. So again, remember that concept that we talked about. Make sure that you always do that. For those of you who selected choice D, by I guess this was a silly mistake. So just make sure that you basically didn't pay attention to the sign of two. Okay, so just be more careful when you are solving questions. Okay, all right. So let's now move on to our next question. Now, the next question has two linear inequalities, and one of the linear inequality is the same as this one. So you can definitely take up x is less than 2 from the solution and move it forward. Okay. So again, you don't have to solve it all over again. You can utilize your solution over here. So let's click on still have not solved yet. All right. Last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So how was this question? Do you guys feel confident about this question? It's easy, slightly tricky, good, pretty easy as well. Okay. What if I were to tell you that only 37% of the class got this question correct? So the correct answer here is choice B. And where you guys faltered was something very, very simple, but something that you really have to be very, very attentive towards, which is to identify the constraints that are specified in the question. What is the constraint that is specified in the question? Yes, everyone who selected choice B will be able to identify that. Absolutely, yes, it's an integer. Okay, that what you need to figure out is the minimum value of the integer x, right? So all of you who selected choice A, is minus 5.5 an integer? All of you who selected choice A, 42% of the class, is minus 5.5 an integer? So look what you guys did. You solved both the inequalities, right? You figured out what the common values are, but you messed up at the end because you didn't focus on the fact that there was a constraint specified in the question statement. So write this down as a very, very important skill that you need to have, which is to identify constraints that are specified. Okay. Now there are two kinds of constraints. One is that is explicitly stated in the question statement. The other one is conceptual constraint. Okay, and we'll talk about those as well in the next set of questions that we have. Okay, but right now, my feedback to you is definitely always make sure that you identify all the constraints that are specified in the question statement. Okay, now let's just go through the solution real quick. We need to find the minimum value of x for these that satisfy these two inequalities. What we have is one linear inequality which we had already solved. The solution to that is x is less than minus 2. And we're going to solve the second inequality over here. Okay. Again, 2x is greater than or equal to minus 11. We divide both sides. What we get is x is greater than or equal to minus 5.5. So you now plot this on the number line. Again, x is less than minus 2, so minus 2 is not included in the solution. So what you have is 5, 4, 3, 2. 5, 4, and 3 as the possible integral values of x. Okay, x is greater than or equal to minus 5.5, x is less than minus 2. What the three possible values of x that come about over here from these two constraints is that minus 5, minus 4, and minus 3. We needed to find the minimum value, which is minus 5.5. Okay. Now, for those of you who selected choices E or D, again, minus 2 is not included in the solution. So you have to be very careful with inequalities. When is it less than or when is it less than or equal to? Likewise, when is it greater than or when is it greater than or equal to? Okay. So again, for those of you who selected minus 3, again, quite a few, 4 of you who selected choice D, you did not pay attention to the fact that it was the minimum value. Minus 5 is smaller than minus 3. Okay. So you somehow misread as maximum. Again, have to be very, very clear about what is it that the question is asking you to find out. Okay. Again, think about it. A number of you got this question wrong, not because you don't know how to solve inequalities. Okay. You know how to solve linear inequalities, but you didn't know how to, you didn't either consider that um, you didn't either consider the constraint that was specified or you didn't pay attention to the fact that it was minimum versus maximum. Okay, so be very, very cognizant of these things that are given to you in the question statement. Okay. All right, then let's move on to our next question. We are now moving into quadratic inequalities. Now, I'll be giving you two questions, one after another, question number 3, and then without discussing the solution, I'm going to be showing you the next question, question number 4. Okay, so you'll be solving two questions back to back here. So let's click on have not solved yet. All right, here you go. Last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Here is your next question. And before that, let me share the poll. Yeah, click on still solving, please. All right. Here is your next question. Go ahead. Question number 4. It looks very similar. Again, the question statement is a bit different. Last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. All right. So, tell me, how was the experience of solving these two questions? Exactly same inequality, quadratic inequality, fun, good. How many of you are confident of your solution? How many of you are confident about how you solve this question? You get that good feeling that, yeah, I think I have this question under control. I can solve it. Reminded of complex numbers. Oh, no, no, there's nothing complex about GMAT. Not sure that am I still making a mistake. Okay. All right. So let's go through. So about 70% of the class feels confident. Okay. Well, there's definitely some good learnings coming from these two questions. Let's go through this solution. The question number 3, the correct answer is choice D, which only about 21% of the class selected. Okay. The most popular choice was choice A. Now, let me ask you this question up front. Choice A, 43% of the class selected choice A. Tell me, what is the question asking you here? I'm not even going to solve this question just yet. Just tell me, what is the question asking you here? Ah, I see that aha moment coming about. Z squared, absolutely right. What you need is the range of values for Z squared. I see that OMG also coming about. So tell me now, can Z squared be any value that's less than 0? z square cannot be negative. Absolutely right. Okay. So this is again the case of you not making a note of the constraints that are there on in the question statement. Now, this is what I was talking about is a conceptual constraint. The question statement is not saying that z square cannot be negative. Okay. You need to know that on your own based on your understanding of what a square of a number is. Okay. It's always positive. Okay. It's always non-negative is what I would say. Okay. So that's a mistake that a big chunk of class did. All right. And if you had not made that mistake, then yes, in this question, the class as a whole would have had 64% accuracy. Okay. But right now it's down to 21%. Okay. So now that this thing is taken care of, let's go through the solution real quick. Again, solving this question is relatively straightforward. What you need to do is you need to, again, just keep in mind again, what we are doing over here is z square plus 4 is times z square minus 2 is less than 0, right? So in what scenario would these two be less than, would the product be less than 0? If one is negative and the other is positive. Now, z square plus 4 can never be a negative number, right? This will always be a positive number. So the only number that can be negative between the two is z square minus 2. Z square minus 2 is less than 0. Z square is less than 2. And this is the range that you get for z square, which is choice D. So very, very straightforward question. Okay. Again, you could have used wavy line method here as well. I won't go into the details of that. Ultimately, you end up with the same exact thing. Okay, so what's the learning from this question? Question number 3, what are the learnings from this question? Read carefully, identify constraints. Absolutely very, very important. Okay. Keep your eyes open, read the constraints, but see implicit constraints. Absolutely right. And again, if you think about it, solving a quadratic inequality, which may look very, daunting, right? To tell you the truth, early on, when I had started learning algebra, quadratic inequalities really used to scare me, right? But now I'm no longer scared because they're just so very simple. All you have to do is apply the knowledge of product of numbers. When are they greater than 0? When are they less than 0? That's about it, right? Then you simply keep in mind the constraints. If you just focus on the basic principles, such inequalities are really very easy to solve. Okay, all right. Let's now move on to question number 4 here. If z is an integer, and let me bring about the poll for question number 4. The correct answer here is choice C, which about 32% of the class selected. Okay, so let's see where you faltered here. If z is an integer, again, we'll start off with the same thing, right? What we have over here is, okay, what we get is 0 is less than or equal to z square is less than 2, right? Now, if z is an integer, z square could be 0 or 1, right? Which means that there are two values of z. Okay, so choice C is the correct answer too. For those of you who selected choice D, tell me why is it that you selected choice D as the correct answer? Where did you get 3 from? Yeah, but then z square cannot be negative. Why can't minus 1 work? You tell me why can't minus 1 work? Because z square, what is it that you have, for how many values of z square? Right, z square is a non-negative number. Okay. So again, 2 cannot work, neither can any negative value of negative value work. Okay. So again, similar principles that are being applied here. The point that we are trying to explain over here is that as long as you stick to the basics, as long as you follow the process in the right manner, as long as you don't rush to solving the to, to actually doing calculations on your paper, you will be able to do well if your concepts are solid. If you know how to solve a linear inequality, if you know how to solve a quadratic inequality, there is no reason why you would not be able to solve questions that are difficult as long as you stick to the basics, as long as you make a note of what is given to you. Z is an integer. How many values of z square? We need to find the number of values of z square, right? So z square means that it would always be a positive number. Okay, so again, those are the things which you need to really focus on as you're solving questions. And again, GMAT is such a logical exam, and the the test doesn't expect you to do all those complicated calculations or know all those high funda things. No, it's a very, very simple conceptual based, application based exam in which all you need to have is very solid understanding of the concepts and very solid grasp on how do you solve questions. And these are the different things that you have to keep in mind as you solve questions. Make a note of constraints, make a note of what is the question asking you to do. Okay? All right. So let's do a quick overview of what we have learned from questions 1 through 4. Basic application of concepts related to that you change the sign of the inequality whenever you multiply it by a negative number. We saw that in question number 1. We also saw that perfect square is always non-negative. Again, we saw that in the last two questions. We learned the way, we didn't learn the wavy line method, but we kind of applied that in question number 4. But again, you should go back and learn the wavy line method through the article that I shared with you. Then how do you simplify an equation to bring it to a known form? That's what we did in the previous two questions. And then you focus on the constraints. That's very, very important. That's what we did from questions 2, 3, and 4 in all of those. And read the question statement properly. It's the range of z square and not z. Okay, it's very, very important. All right. So now let's go into our 700 level questions. Now these questions are getting, again, we're applying the same concepts, but they're getting a bit more complicated as we apply those. The application is getting a bit more involved. Okay. So let me get the poll here. Okay, before I go into 700 level questions, let me ask you this question here. How is the session proceeding for you guys? What are you enjoying the session? What are you getting from it? Just want to get the pulse of the class here. So far, so good. Okay. Grasping missing concepts. Great. Very good. All right. Sounds nice. Reality check. Yes. Very, very nice. A bit slow. Okay. Okay. Big time reality check. Very nice. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Let's now move on to 700 level questions. Let's click on have not solved yet. I will share the link of Wavy line method. So Ashutosh and Sandeep, can you please share the link over here in the Q&A part, please? Share it with everyone. Okay, let's go. Here you go. Last 1 minute. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so here the correct answer is choice E, which is 6, and about 31% of the class selected this choice. So let's go through the solution. If you think about it, it's a relatively straightforward question because you have two linear inequalities that you need to solve, and then you need to find out you find the ranges of x and y, and then you figure out what is a positive difference between the minimum possible values of x and y. Okay, now tell me. Okay, so let's go through the solution and tell me where you guys faltered. I'm pretty sure every one of you knows how to solve linear inequalities, right? So let's go through the solution, and I want you to pay close attention to it and tell me where is it that you faltered. Okay. Um, First of all, let me do a quick voice check. Is my voice loud and clear? I know there's one person who's complaining about that, so I just want to make sure that is it okay from. Okay, so I would really recommend you to check your settings, maybe join the session back again. All right, so thank you. All right. So we have to find out the positive difference between minimum value of x and minimum value of y, right? So for this, first we need to figure out is we need to find out the ranges of x and y. So what else do we know? We know that x and y are positive integers. How many of you noticed this constraint that x and y are positive integers? How many of you made a note of this constraint? Good. All right. Now we'll see where we will end up using that constraint. So the first thing is we bring the inequalities in the standard form. Okay. Again, if you don't know what a standard form is, I'm pretty sure you guys that's what you're doing. Basically, both the inequalities need to have the same sign of inequality, same sign of inequality. Only then you can do processing on them. So you bring them to the standard form here. Again, I'm not going to go through how I get to the ranges, but how many of you were able to get to y is greater than 6 and x is less than 8? How many of you were able to get to these 2 points here? Basically, x is less than 8 and y is greater than 6. Okay. So for those of you who were not, 7 of you who were not able to get to this answer, you must have made some mistake while solving the linear inequalities. Okay, that's my feedback point to you. Now, for those of you who got to this point, let's see where you faltered. Okay. X is less than 8. So what is the minimum value of x then? If x is less than 8, then what is the minimum value of x? Absolutely right. The minimum value of x is 1. It's not 0 because x is a positive integer. Okay. So minimum value of x is 1. How about what is the minimum value of y? What is the minimum value of y? Y is greater than 6, so the minimum value of y is 7. Absolutely right. Now all you have to do is do 7 minus 1. That's it. Calculate the difference. Now tell me, at what points did you falter? What kind of mistake did you make? If x is less than 8, then is the minimum value 7 or is that the maximum value? Okay. Now, if you got x is greater than 8, then you must have made a mistake over here. You must have made a mistake here that you simply canceled out the signs. You did not change the sign of inequality. Okay. So, guys, if you think about it, this question, the accuracy for this question is 32%, which makes it a very hard question. But if you look at the processing that is involved, it's a very straightforward question. If you know how to solve inequalities, right? Make sure that you change the sign if you're multiplying both sides by -1, right? As over here. Okay. Beyond that, just make a note of what the constraints are, process those constraints correctly. X is less than 8, so the minimum value of x will be 1, not 7. That's the maximum value of x, right? Y is greater than 6, so the minimum value of y will be 7. Okay, that's all that it takes to solve such questions. Very straight step-by-step form here. Now, is the standard form necessary here? It seems like we end up adding steps here. Again, it's up to you how you want to solve linear inequalities. For me, the standard form works out very straight, very easy. Why? Because it makes sure that I am not making any mistakes. Okay, it's very easy to falter when you have three different kinds of terms, when you have a sign also to take care of, greater than or less than sign. Okay, and that's the big difference between an equation and an inequality. That's why the more methodical you are, the fewer would be the chances of you making a mistake. Okay, all right. Put y is equal to 6 in equation 1. You can't do that, right? Because you need to find out the ranges of both x and y, and then you need to figure out what the minimum value of both x and y are. Okay. All right, then let's now move on to question number 6. But let me ask you this question. Was this question really difficult? Answer in the yes no poll, please. No, it wasn't difficult. Is there anything to solve this question that you don't know? So why the disconnect then? If this question was not difficult, if there is nothing that you don't know, that if there's nothing that you what you need to solve is okay, let me reframe the sentence. If you know everything that you need to know in order to solve this question, then why such a poor accuracy? The reason for that is the process. You need to follow a step by step process. You need to learn the step by step process. How is it that you make sure that before you even put that pen on paper, you make a mental note of and you absorb those constraints that are specified, the methodology that you need to use to solve the question? That is what you're going to learn through the application files that we have in the course. That is what you're going to learn when you're fine tuning your preparation using Scholaranium, when you review each and every solution and you figure out, oh, I made a mistake at that step. That revelation is so very important for each and every question that you solve. And those revelations are possible only when you have solutions that are presented in a step by step manner. Okay. All right. Now let's come to the next question, which is a very laborious question, is what I would say. There's nothing that you don't know in that question, but it's just very laborious. So be very systematic for the next question. And again, you may ask me whether we're ever going to get such a question in the test. You may not. But the diligence that is required to solve that question will actually help you understand to what extent you need to be methodical. Okay? Are you guys getting tired? Because I can see that now not that many people are clicking on have not solved yet. I know you've been solving questions since the last, what, 1.5 hours now? All right, good. Thank you. Let's move on to question number 6. It's a fun question, but have fun with it. Do it in a very step-by-step manner. Okay, go ahead. No rush. I will give you ample amount of time. Guys, it's been quite some time since you've been solving this question. Do you need more time or are you guys a little bit lost? So tell me if you need more time, I will give you guys more time. Lost more time. Yes, 1 minute. Okay, let me give you 1 more minute. For those of you who are still solving it, continue solving it. For those of you who are completely lost, don't worry about it. Just take that 1 minute break and then we'll be back. Okay? All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. So the correct answer here is choice A. But frankly, for this question, what I would say is the destination doesn't matter, it's the journey that's more important. Okay. So it doesn't matter whether you got to the correct answer or not. The most important thing over here is how did you approach it? Did you try to simplify the question along the way? So I'm going to be asking you some questions here and tell me yes or no. Um, how many of you substituted 1 by r square as a variable, let's say x, and 1 by s square as y as a variable? Basically, this is what I'm talking about. We need to find out which segments best presents the overlap zones for R and S. So technically what we need to find out is the ranges of R and S, and then we need to take those two ranges and we need to figure out the overlap zone. Okay, that's what we need to figure out. So constraints, there are no constraints on RNS. Now, these are two inequalities, right? Now, we need to figure out what type of inequality these are. If we actually replace 1 by r square as x and 1 by s square as y, we can get two sets of linear inequalities. So my question to you is, how many of you tried to do it in this manner, wherein you got two, two linear inequalities first? Okay, so that's the first feedback point, that you should always identify ways of simplifying the information that's given to you, because clearly 1 by r square, I mean, having squares in the denominator, inequalities, I mean, that is the recipe for creating a daunting looking question. Okay, so what you have to do is sift through the scary part of it and just simplify it. Okay, and that's where, and you take baby steps here. You just simplify. You first take 1 by r square as s, 1 by s square as y, and then you solve your inequalities. And when you solve your inequalities, what you end up getting over here is x is less than 16 and y is less than 25. So obviously, people who didn't simplify in the previous step, my next question is not going to be applicable for you. But for those of you who did simplify and who did get linear inequalities, how many of you were able to get to x is less than 16 and y is less than 25? Okay. Now, good. Now, let's see how to process it further. Now, what you end up getting is 1 by r square is less than 16. Okay, and you end up getting this quadratic inequality. Likewise, you end up getting this quadratic inequality for s. Okay, so now you have two quadratic inequalities, one in r and one in s. You simply figure out the zones over there, and then you figure out the overlap zone. That's about it. Okay, now if you are not able to understand how we got r minus 1 by 4, how we got this overlap zone for r, this range for R and this range for S, just review the wavy line method or review the method for solving quadratic inequalities after the session, and then come back to these two to this question as well. Solve it on your own. You will be able to get it. And what do we mean by overlap zone? Basically, overlap zone is nothing but a common zone. So if you think about it, S, the common zone, the range for S involves all these values over here. Okay, range for R involves all these values over here. So the common values between the two is really the range for R, because whatever is true for R is also true for S. Okay, so that's all we are doing over here. So now tell me, what was complicated about this question? Is there any concept that you don't know? You know all the concepts, right? You know how to solve you know how to solve linear inequalities, you know how to solve quadratic inequalities, right? What you didn't know is that you didn't really apply the skill of simplifying. Okay, very, very important. I replaced r square as x and not 1 by r square as x. Very good point. Thank you for specifying that. Again, the key thing is you have to simplify your analysis, right? How do you solve it? You need to simplify that, and the most simplified thing would be if you replace 1 by r square as x. Okay, again, think about it. What do you have in your arsenal? You know how to solve linear inequalities, you know how to solve quadratic inequalities. Those are the only two types of inequalities that are there in your syllabus, right? That's covered within the realm of GMAT exam, right? So whenever you get a complicated looking expression or equation or inequality, question yourself, how can I convert that into the form that I'm more familiar with? Okay, that is the translation that you need to do. That is the simplification that you need to do. That's a skill that you have to build, and that's a skill that we teach you through our application files and through each and every question that you see in Scholarly. That's the skill which, if required on GMAT on official questions, you're going to see the application of that skill through the solutions that we have in the official questions. That's when you build up your skill level. That's when you are able to solve such a complicated looking question very, very easily. There are no tricks involved, there are no shortcuts involved, just your straight up, step by step methods. Okay? All right. So, again, the last two questions, converting inequalities into standard form, again, that's a conceptual understanding. Okay? Simplifying an equation to bring it to a known form, that's what we did in the last question. That's what I was talking about. How do you simplify information? Okay? Focus on constraints on the variables, reading the question statement properly. Okay? Again, these are the process skills that you absolutely have to build if you want to score that 720 or higher. Okay, then. Now we're going to come to some DS questions. And we're going to be solving, I think, two DS questions here. Let's see. And these are both based on absolute value. First of all, tell me, how many of you are comfortable solving data sufficiency questions? Okay. I want you guys to follow a step-by-step process to solve data sufficiency questions. Okay. DS questions appear to be difficult because we are not very familiar with DS questions. Okay. But as such, if you have strong conceptual understanding, there is no reason why DS questions will be difficult. Okay. Now, the step-by-step method that I would that we teach you is, first you read the question statement, you understand everything that you need to understand from the question statement. Simplify the question statement to the extent that when you take a look at the individual statements, you are not thinking about the original question statement, but you're thinking about the simplified question statement. What is it that you need to find out from the individual statements, right? So simplify the question statement. Now, when you read statement one, Again, solve that statement, keeping in mind that you need to find the answer to the simplified question statement. When you see question of statement number two, forget all about statement one. That's a very, very important thing. Forget all about statement one when you start looking at statement two. If you don't get your answers from one and two individually, then you combine the two informations. Okay, the information from the two statements. Okay, all right then. So let's go into solving our first data sufficiency question. And again, the first one is relatively straightforward, very, very basic applications. So make sure to apply your conceptual understanding. Okay, so let's click on have not solved yet. All right, here you go. All right, last 15 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Interesting. So, how was this question? Did you guys feel confident as you were doing it? Okay, you were confident. Okay. All right. So, let's take a look at how we should have. I thought I was confident until I wasn't. I understand that. Looking at the results, um, the results would have definitely shaken up your confidence. That's okay. Let's look at where we what we did right and what we did not do right. Remember, that's what the journey is more important here. Is Z positive? What we need to figure out is Z positive? And what's been given to us is that mod of z is less than 6, okay, and z is an integer. Those are the two things that's given to us. Now, what are the possible values of z if mod of z is less than 6? Tell me, what are all the possible values of z if mod of z is less than 6? Minus 5 to plus 5 inclusive of minus 5 and 5. Absolutely right. Okay. So, good. So, or in other words, you can say minus 6 is less than z is less than 6. So, there are a total of 11 possible values. Minus 4, minus 5, minus 4, 0, then 1 through 5. Good. Okay. Everyone got this? Yes or no? Everyone was able to process this information? Good, very nice. Now let's take a look at statement number 1. What is statement 1 saying? Mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3. That is what it's saying. Now my first question to you is, can we write mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3 as minus 3 is less than z minus 2 is less than 3? Is this the correct interpretation? The correct answer here is no, we cannot do that. Okay. This expression, this range is true when you have the other inequality, that is mod of z minus 2 is less than 3. In this case, what you have is mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3. Okay, so in fact, let's try to visualize that on the number line. For those of you who were saying that, yes, I want you guys to visualize this on the number line. Let's say z minus 2 is equal to t, which means mod of t is greater than 3. Now, mod of t is greater than 3 will be applicable for, if you take a look at these values here, you will see that is going to be applicable for all the values that are less than 3 and for all the values that are greater than 3. Okay, this range over here is there only when mod of t is less than 3. So again, this graphic is shown simply to help you understand that when mod of t is greater than 3, it's really beyond. It's either this or this part of the number line. The part which is within minus 3 and 3 is really for the inequality mod of t is less than 3. Is this part clear? Yes or no for those of you who were confused? Good. All right. So now this was really conceptual clarity, right? So now what we have is mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3, right? Now how is it that we can figure out what the range of z is? Let's see. Now either z minus 2 is greater than 3 or z minus 2 is less than 3. Again, look at this number line over here, right? That's all we are doing. We are simply processing the information that if mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3, then what are the two possible ranges that are there for z? Okay. Now from here, what we get is z is greater than 5. From this inequality, what we get is z is less than minus 1, right? Now, what was given to us? The question statement said that z mod of z, what did the question statement say? That mod of z is less than 6, right? Now, if mod of z is less than 6 and z is greater than 5, is there any possible value? This is what was given to us, right, from the question statement. Now, if you have, actually, let me get rid of these annotations. They're getting a bit confusing. Let me just get rid of this here. All right. Okay, so what I'm saying is, let's take up z is greater than 5. Now, what you know from the question statement is that minus 6 is less than z is less than 6. My question to you is there any value of z that satisfies both these scenarios, both these conditions? That z is greater than 5 and z is less than 6. No. Remember, z is an integer, right? So this thing results in no value of z. Let's take a look at z is less than minus 1. Okay, and this is what the question statement told us. Minus 6 is less than z is less than 6. Now from this, what we can figure out is that all values of z are negative. Okay, which means that statement 1 is definitely sufficient. Clear? Yes or no? Now, only 25% of the class selected choice A as the correct answer. So tell me, what part of the solution do you not understand? Because it's very important to understand whether it's conceptual understanding that you're lacking in, or whether it's combining information that you're lacking in. And that's the critical part of DS. Okay. When it comes to, let's say, if you faltered, and this is the feedback part that I'm getting at, okay? Let's say you were not able to understand that how to get to this point here, getting to this point here, okay? And let me ask you this question. What my question to you is, how many of you understand how to get to this point? Z minus 2, mod of Z minus 2 is greater than 3. It means that Z is greater than 5, or minus 6 is less than Z is less than minus 1. Okay. If you guys follow along till this point, that means you know how to solve an absolute value in an absolute value inequality. Okay. That's the feedback. Now, beyond that, if you were not able to, if you got to this point, but you were still not able to figure out that all values are negative, that means you were not able to combine the information. Okay. And that's the feedback that is very, very important to you, because when you solve a question incorrectly, when you're not able to get to the correct answer, typically what you guys would do is you would mark this question in your error log as, okay, so let me ask you this instead of telling you, tell me, if you got this question wrong today, which about 75% of the class did, what would be your statement in your error log? How are you going to log this question as? How many of you will log this question as absolute value inequality? How many of you will log this question in your error log as absolute value inequality? Almost everyone, right? But is that the right kind of feedback? Because if you were able to get to this point, that means you know how to solve an absolute value inequality. It's really how do you process the information that you were not able to understand. Okay. Essentially what you had to do was, and I'll repeat the combining information part, right? If you look at this is what the question statement told us, right? Minus 6 is less than Z is less than 6. This is what you're getting from one of the ranges that you're getting, right? So you simply figure out that, okay, there is no integral value between 5 and 6. Okay. Now you take this and you put it in context with minus 6, sorry, Z is less than minus 1, right? That's what you're getting, which means that all values are negative. Okay. So again, you're combining information. And my bad, I think what I said earlier was Z is greater than 5 and Z is less than minus 1 is the solution for the inequality. Okay. This part over here is really combination. So this is what you need to arrive at when you're combining information from the question statement. Okay. Okay, we are going to go into the second statement. Okay, but is this point clear? I want you guys to be sure about where is it that you're faltering in DS questions. Okay, let's now take a look at mod of Z is equal to 2. Now, what does this lead to? This leads to Z being either plus 2 or minus 2, which means you don't know if Z is positive or negative, which means that statement 2 is not sufficient. Okay, which means that the correct answer is choice A. Okay, all right then. Okay, now we are on to our last question. Actually, no, there are two more questions left. Okay, all right. So there are two more questions left. So another, I would say, 20 minutes. I know there's one person who's asking till what time will the webinar go on. Okay, all right. Let's go to our second last question of the session. Let's click on have not solved yet. Okay, good. I like the enthusiasm. Go ahead, solve it. Last 30 seconds? I would say last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so was this question easy, difficult, complicated, looked straightforward? What was it? Tricky, easy, tricky, confusing, hard? Okay. All right, still doubtful. Okay, let's go through the solution. Is A less than B? That's all we need to figure out, right? Is A less than B? And again, we won't do any complicated processing. We'll simply apply our conceptual understanding. What do we understand of what modulus is? Okay. So statement 1 says mod of A minus B is equal to B minus A. Now it looks a little bit straightforward, but at the same time, you have to process it. You have to do certain processing in your mind. Now, this side is an absolute value, right? And what is the property of an absolute value? Absolute value of a number is non-negative is what I would say, right? It's always positive. So what I would say is, so if mod of x is equal to y, that means y is equal to the absolute value of a number, which means y is a non-negative number. So from there, so if, for those of you who are saying positive, that's not correct. That's not precise. It is a non-negative number, which means that mod of a number is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay. If mod of x is equal to y, then y is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay. So that's the same principle that we'll apply here. B minus a is equal to mod of a number, which means b minus a is always going to be greater than or equal to 0. How many of you were able to get to this point? How many of you translated this absolute value equation into b minus a is greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0? Okay, so that's the first feedback point, okay, for this particular question. You always need to you need to always consider that an absolute value is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay, now once we have this, what do we get? We get two scenarios. Either b is greater than or equal to a, we get b is greater than or equal to a, which means there are two conditions that are possible. A is equal to b or a is less than b, which means that I cannot find the answer to the question that's asked. Okay, now for those of you who got a is equal to b, you simply did the processing over here. You didn't consider that y is that there is a condition that a is less than b. Okay, all right. So again, very simple, simply applying the concept of absolute value and applying that over here. There is no complicated equation solving at all over here. Now let's take a look at statement number 2. A by B is less than 1. My question to you is, can I say that A is less than B? Can I say if A by B is less than 1, can I say that A is less than B? Why can I not say that? For those of you who are saying no, why is that? Absolutely right, because B can be negative as well. So for those of you who are saying yes, and quite a few of you are saying yes, you forgot that rule that you cannot multiply both sides. If you're multiplying both sides of the inequality by a negative number, then the sign of the inequality will change, which means that you cannot simply say A by B is less than 1. You cannot say that A is less than B. Okay? You don't know anything about B. Okay, so there are two cases now. Case 1 is b is greater than 0. Case 2 is that b is less than 0. If you consider case 1, then you get a is less than b. If you consider case 2, then you get a is greater than b. Okay, so you have to work to that. Absolutely right. So statement 2 is also not sufficient. So really what you cannot simply say a is less than b looking at statement number 2. you have to consider the two cases. Case one where B is negative, case two when B is positive. And then you figure out what it is that what it is that you get from this inequality. Okay, so statement 2 is also not sufficient. So I have to now combine the two statements. What did I get from statement 1? Two scenarios over here. What did I get from statement 2? Another two scenarios here. If both the statements are true, then combining these two, what I can get is A is less than B. If this statement is also true and if this statement is also true, then the only possible relationship that exists is A is less than B, if both of these statements are true. And that's when I can get to the answer that yes, both conditions together are sufficient. So the correct answer is choice C. So now tell me, why was the accuracy for this question 15%? Only 15% of the students were able to answer this question correctly. What's the feedback that you're taking for yourself from this solution? I want you guys to get in the habit of taking feedback. And no, that's not the feedback that I want you to get at, that I shouldn't write the GMAT anymore. No. The feedback that I want you guys to get at is, what is it that I need to do in order to improve so that I can do well on the GMAT? Okay, so this question is really based on your 200% clarity of what do you mean by absolute value. Okay, that is what this question exemplifies. Okay, so my other feedback to you is, whenever you're solving questions, regardless of whether you're getting them right or wrong, always review the solutions. Okay, review each and every part of the solution regardless of whether you're getting the question right or wrong, because I want to make sure that you understand each and every processing that is done, each and every step that is done in the solution. Okay. Now for those of you who marked choice C as the correct answer, did you do all the processing that I've shown in the solution? Or in other words, did you answer the question correctly for the right reasons? Okay, here you go. So what was the step that you didn't do? Because again, there are 12 of you over here who marked choice C. Okay, I want to make sure that all of you mark the question correctly for the right reasons. And I can see that 3 of you did not mark it for the right reasons. So again, get the right kind of feedback from the solution, regardless of whether you get the question right or wrong. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to our next question here. Last question here. So here you go. Let's click on have not solved yet. I must say one thing. You guys are really very enthusiastic and energetic at this point. Good. I'm glad to see that. Usually by the time we get to the last question, people have kind of gotten tired, but I really appreciate the enthusiasm here. So good. Let's solve this last question and end this session at a very high note. Go ahead. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so let's solve this question quickly now. Is z greater than 2? That's all we need to find out. Okay, so nothing much to, no constraint about whether z is integer or whatnot. Okay, so can we see the result? Yes, sure, I'll show you the result, but that's going to confuse you more. Okay, so let's now look at statement number 1. Mod of z minus 2 whole square is greater than 4. Now tell me one thing. Is there any application of or utility of modulus in this inequality? Absolutely right. Mod is not really needed. Why? Why is that the case? Why is that the case? Because it's already squared. Yes. So you have a square within a modulus. A square of a number is always non-negative, right? So there isn't much of a utility of having a modulus over here. So what I can do is, and pardon this, there's a bit of a glitch here. All of these twos are actually squares, right? So pardon this thing over here. So what we end up getting is, so each of these twos is actually a square. So what we end up doing is z minus 2 whole square is greater than 2 square, right? What is 4? 4 is 2 square. So I can remove the mod and all I have is z minus 2. So I put that. And what I have over here is z minus 2 whole square is greater than 2 square. Okay. So I do z minus 2 whole square minus 2 square is greater than 0. So I'm simply processing it and I get my, from this absolute value, quadratic inequality, what I get is a simple quadratic inequality. Okay. Now, so z minus 4 into z is greater than 0. How many of you were able to get to this point? How many of you were able to simplify the statement 1 as this quadratic inequality? Good. Okay. Now, for those of you who were not able to, look at the processing once more and do it. Okay. Uh, so over here, what I'm simply doing is you can. I've used the wavy line method, but you can use whatever method you're comfortable with. The two possible values of z ranges of z are z is less than 0 and z is greater than 4. So I want you to do that processing on your own. For those of you who are still not comfortable with quadratic inequalities, after the session, when I share with you the PDF of this file, make sure that you review the wavy line concept, the article, and then also how we do quadratic inequality processing, go through the concept file as well, and then come back to each of these quadratic inequalities, solve them, and get to the ranges on your own. Okay, that's your homework for sure. Okay, so what we have is z is less than 0 and z is greater than 4, which means that I really don't know if z is greater than 2, because if any of the value, because it could be less than 0 as well. So I don't know. I can't really answer the question. So for those of you who selected choice A as the correct answer, you made a mistake here. Okay. All right, so let's look at statement number 2. Now, what is the inference that you can draw from statement number 2? Mod of 8x minus 4k is equal to z. What inference can you draw from statement number 2? Absolutely right. Z is non-negative number. Absolutely right. That's it. Z is a non-negative number. We don't know what x is. We don't know what k is. But what we do know is that z is mod of some number. And if z is mod of some number, that means that z is greater than or equal to 0, which means that z can be greater than 0 or z can be equal to 0. Again, I do not know if z is greater than 2 or not, which means that statement 2 is not sufficient. Okay. Now I have to combine the two statements. And when I combine the two statements, what I get is that z is greater than 4. Okay. If both these statements are true, then the only situation in which both these statements will be true is that z is greater than 4, which means that I can answer the question that was asked in the question statement, that is z greater than 2. Okay? So choice C is the correct answer, which about 22% of the class selected. So again, where did you guys falter in this question? If you think about it, all we did was we simply applied the concepts that we know about absolute values. That's it. And you have to have that razor sharp confidence in the concepts. That's why whenever I say that understand your concepts, I don't just mean 100% understanding. I mean 200% understanding of the concepts. Saying that mod of a number is great is positive, that's not correct. Mod of a number uh, uh, is always non-negative number. That's the level of confidence that you need to have. Okay. Why z less than 0? Again, as I said, you have to solve the quadratic inequality that's there. Okay, you from solving that you get z, you get two possible ranges. Z is less than 0 or z is greater than 4. Two possible ranges on the number line. Okay. All right. So in all of this, tell me, is any of this difficult? Yes or no? We've solved what total of 9 questions in the 9 plus 6, 15 questions. Is any of this difficult? It's just that you need to have that level of confidence. You need to know how to apply the concepts, right? You just have to apply those concepts really very well. Frankly, GMAT Quant can be mastered, okay, very easily as long as you focus on the right things. That's very important, okay. You can improve from a low GMAT score to a high GMAT score if you focus on learning the right things. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you certain success stories of people who started off from a different level so that you can understand uh, what you can understand that regardless of the level you're at, you can get to that score of Q49 or Q50. Okay. If you're saying that you know the concepts, but application is where you faltered, then that's what you need to focus on. Okay. All right. The first success story is for people who think they are good in GMAT Quant. Okay. And I would really urge all of you to read his verified review on GMAT Club. Krish had always done well in quant, but was stumped by the GMAT. He constantly faltered while answering GMAT questions, falling in familiar traps. Frustrated with lack of progress, he decided to change his approach, and he started following a methodical approach as as I taught you in this session, as we teach you in each and every application file in your course. Okay, he even changed his approach to data sufficiency questions completely. After making these changes, he was able to improve his quant score to Q51, and that's the highest possible in quant, scoring a 740. Now, the next success story is, let me get to that. The next success story is of Leonardo, who was someone who was not excellent in GMAT quant and was stuck at Q45 despite trying really hard. He needed a high quant score because he wanted to apply to finance focused schools such as NYU, Wharton, as well as schools such as Stepper. To improve beyond Q45, he adopted a methodical approach. Again, methodical approach is the key to everything. He started consciously focusing on constraints, something that we talked about in quite a few questions here. He started to show his work on paper, something that I told you that you need to write down each and everything that's there in the question statement. Once he had the approach right, he made extensive use of analytics that Quant Scholarinium provided him so that he could isolate the areas that he needed to improve upon. Remember what we talked about early on during the introduction, right? You need to perfect right? And Scholaranium is that tool that you can utilize to perfect your learning, right? You need to fine tune your learning, and that's where you get the feedback from. Okay. He then used custom quizzing feature to ensure that he had actually improved on the areas that were identified as his weak areas. And because of his good quant score and excellent verbal score, he was admitted to Wharton, Stern, and Tepper, and he's right now studying at Wharton right now. And that's the outcome that you're looking at. It's not just your GMAT score, it's the ultimate goal that you have to get to the school of your choice, to get to that dream school. Okay, that's what is possible if you prepare methodically, if you focus on the right things. Now, this third success story is of an individual who was extremely weak in quant. His starting score was Q30, a mere 20 percentile. Mazibar, and that's his BTG, Beat the GMAT forum name, spent a ton of time reading quant books, but he was not able to improve. He benefited from the progressive learning architecture at e-GMAT, in which he was able to cement his basics before taking on difficult questions. And in his case, his basics were not strong enough. When his basics were not strong enough, the system gave him the appropriate feedback. He was ultimately able to improve to Q45, which is 59 percentile in quant, and that was a huge improvement over his starting score. Now, Huey Lermo's story is again an amazing story of an individual who had an extremely strong determination to study at top B schools. You know that you need to have that passion, you need to have that desire to get to the dream B school of yours. He started at a Q38, which coincidentally is 38 percentile on GMAT quant. He realized that he needed a stellar quant score to get an admit from Wharton and GSB Chicago, and the only way to improve from such a low score was to truly focus on learning, which he did by using the video lessons in the course. He was short on time, so he used analytics and quant scholaranium to isolate the areas where he needed most help. And like Leonardo, he used the custom quiz feature to ensure that he did improve on those topics. So definitely take a look at his video debrief. So to ace GMAT Quant, focus on learning and adopting good habits. Okay. So as next steps, what I would say is make sure that you have that 200% clarity in concepts. Okay, not 100%, but 200%. Make sure that you solve questions in a step-by-step manner. Okay, become an active reader of question statement. Don't miss out on that integral constraint that's there, or a non-negative integral constraint, or or if there is a mod given to you, or if the value of z square is being asked, but you end up calculating z. No, don't do that. Be an active reader of question statement. Make a note of what it is that you are asked to find. Trust the test maker. This is something which is very important. The test maker is not going to throw anything at you that you don't know, right? You have in your arsenal everything that you need to solve GMAT questions. And the test maker is not going to throw something at you that you can't solve. What the test maker is going to do is, if you don't follow a methodical process, he's going to put in those, he's going to utilize those missteps from your side and put those as traps in the answer choices, right? So as long as you follow a methodical approach, you will not fall in the traps that the test maker creates. Okay, but other than that, the test maker is not going to throw anything at you that you can't solve. The last thing, which is a very important thing, is that you need to believe in your skills. You have everything in your toolkit to solve any of the problems that are going to be asked on the GMAT. Okay, have that level of confidence. So trust not just the test maker, but also yourself. Okay, so with this, we've come to the end of this session. And let me just tell you, for the next steps, look at all the algebra. For those of you who are still not e-GMAT students, I would say look at all the algebra concepts in the free trial. Take a look at I'll be sharing this PDF with you. So solve the questions that you were not able to solve in this session, and also solve 2 extra practice questions that are there in the PDF. I'm going to be sharing those with you, and solve algebra questions in Scholar. Okay. So with this, we've come to the end of this session, and let me get some polls for you. I would like to get your feedback for the session. What is it that you liked? What is it that you learned? And also, I would want you to put in your ratings here. Okay, and then while you do that, I will share the PDF of this session. And I'm going to remove all the questions from here. And if you guys can put in any questions that you may have, I will be happy to address those. Just bear with me for a second here. Here's the batch schedule for the current batch. And here's the session presentation. There you go. So the video course application is the same as the free video on inequality. So we basically have a few concept files from the actual course that we share in the free trial. So some of the so the inequality concept file will be the same, but you won't have any application file in the free trial. So while you can learn the concept file, you won't have any application file in the free trial. All right. Kanika, you have a subject matter related question. So Ashutosh will respond to that. I think you and him were already in a conversation with regards to that question. So, all right. Any other questions, guys? Does it cover all the modules, verbal, quant, IR? Yes, the course covers all the modules. You have sentence correction, critical reasoning, reading comprehension, IR, and all the sections of quant. Priyanka, the PDF has been shared here under the pod session presentation. Thank you everyone for that wonderful feedback over here. So really, we'll be sharing the recording of this session. So yeah, best session ever. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the overwhelming positive feedback. All right. Okay, the PDF. Okay, I missed out on the CR session. So PK, if you're talking about the CR session that happened yesterday, you should have already received the recording of that. But if you are our student and you're talking about the CR session that happened today, which is the evaluate one, then the recording will be uploaded in the system probably in the next 24 hours. Okay. All right. Kanika, please write to us at support@e-gmat.com. Just want to make sure that you shouldn't really be joining as a guest if you are a GLP student, GMAT Live Prep student. So please write to us so that we can make sure that your account is set up appropriately. Um, yes, PK, you are a student. Thank you for that. You should be able to get the recording. We usually update the recordings on Monday, the next working day after the weekend. So you should be able to see the recording by end of day Monday. Um, all right. So I think that's about it. I know you guys were a wonderful audience. It was really lovely conducting this session for you. Very responsive. I really appreciate that. So I can see that you guys must be tired now after this long session. So I'll meet you all next week in the sessions that we conduct. And yeah, good luck and do let us know if you have any questions. Let us know how we can help you prepare for your test. Let us know if you need any help with creating your study plan. Really, very, very important to have a very solid study plan. And for those of you who are taking the test over the course of next week or 15 days, good luck for your test and let us know how you did. Okay. All right then. Bye bye.